Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about not only Joe Biden, but also Joe Rogan. These two characters have come at odds this week, and we're going to talk about the story and why. Basically, Joe Rogan hosts a popular podcast currently here on YouTube, but he's soon going to be moving it over to Spotify, I believe, because he has an exclusive deal with them that's getting him a lot of cash. Regardless, Joe Rogan still lies on YouTube for now, and recently had a pretty good clip him calling out Joe Biden. Joe Biden is, of course, the former vice president who is now running for president himself, but he's had a very rocky, shady campaign, to say the least. Essentially, Joe Biden seems to be some sort of puppet candidate. He doesn't really have the mental aptitude and the kind of life force it takes to take on this endeavor. He's very old. He's going to be 78 by the time we vote. And he's also just not holding up very well. I mean, 78-year-olds can actually be rather productive, but Biden's falling apart. He can barely form coherent sentences. He can really not keep up with interviews. He doesn't take questions. He's not attending rallies. He's not doing press conferences or anything like that. He even said they're not going to the Democratic National Convention. He's not even accepting his party's nomination. I mean, he could get swapped out any time now, actually. I actually think that it's very possible Biden might not be the candidate, but for now he is. And for now, we're going to talk about Joe Rogan, a popular podcast host and pretty smart guy, very, very in tune with current events and pop culture. Sure, he leans left a little bit. Sure, he's a bit of a tinfoil hat kind of guy sometimes. He talks about some funny things, but he also makes great points as well. And that's what we're talking about today. Today, we've got a video and an article where Joe Rogan says that Joe Biden is hiding because he's mentally compromised. He was just at another thing the other day, and he forgot where he was. That, of course, is referencing the time that Joe Biden came out on stage and said he was at one location, which was really not accurate. He thought he was at an old location that he used to work at back in his olden days, but then he remembered, and it just was a really weird situation. But before we get farther into it, let's see what Joe Rogan says for himself.
I believe there's an also large group of people that are very uncomfortable with a man who seems to be mentally compromised winning the election and doing so by hiding. I mean, the guy's never, he was just at another thing the other day and he forgot where he was.
Yeah, he forgot where he was. He's hiding. It's just really creepy. And it's really anti the American method, the American way. We're about free and fair elections. We're about coming out, speaking to the people, going in public, shaking hands, kissing babies, all that old kind of campaign stuff. And granted, we can admit there are some stipulations and some extraneous things going on this year. We do have to, of course, deal with this virus and this pandemic and what's going on in the world. Like, I'm not denying that could change things up, but it's certainly being taken to the extreme with Biden. And I think a lot of people can see that he's taking advantage of the situation. He's not really just hiding because of the virus. It's because he can't speak properly, and every time he does speak, it ruins his chances of winning. So they want to keep him off the microphone as much as possible, and they're using the virus as an excuse. That's what's becoming super, super clear and super, super shady too. Like, as we said, usually the presidents can be out in public, even if you're not shaking hands and kissing babies. That's just what people say as like a sort of turn of phrase for running for public office. But you can go out there and speak. You could take questions. You could still socially distance. You could still make sure to separate everyone in the crowd. If you're talking to reporters or having a crowd of, say, fans, you could have them spread out in some kind of seating arrangement. But the point is, Biden doesn't want to go out. He doesn't want to come out of his closet. He's hiding on purpose. And I think this might have happened with or without the virus. The virus is just giving him a great excuse to try and get away with it. And with that said, let's read more into this article. The Washington Times covered this Joe Rogan story. Let's see what they have to say. Joe Rogan says Americans can look forward to a weekend at Bernie's type presidency if Joseph R. Biden is elected in November. The podcasting star sat down with former CIA covert operations officer Mike Baker this week for a wide-ranging interview when the Democrats' mental health came up. Mr. Rogan says he doesn't believe early polls showing Mr. Biden with a commanding lead, given media bias and the 77-year-old's public showings. Yeah, I think that's safe to say, too, from the last election. I mean, the last election had polls that said Trump would never win no matter what. They also had things that said, Hillary's going to win, 99% chance Hillary's going to win. So I think polls have pretty much been debunked. I know they can still serve a purpose, and people want to use polls in politics to gain data and see where they should invest time in and stuff like that. But as far as predicting elections, they've been shown to be very, very inaccurate. And specifically, I think they're intentionally inaccurate. I think there is a way to poll people better. And if we wanted to fix this system and like go after people and cold call them or however they may do it in a more fair and balanced way, it's possible. But there's also a balance and a biased issue with the actual polling and the people reporting the polls, the CNNs and the MSNBC. They find polls that they like and they report ones that confirm their bias, which is just the totally wrong way to do it. That's not scientific or critical thinking at all. It's just trying to promote their own propaganda. The dumbest people in the world are the ones who answer polls, Mr. Rogan said Tuesday. So out of the dumbest people in the world with nothing to do, most of them are picking Biden. Or more of them are picking Biden, but says who? Says all the media outlets who want Trump to lose? How do we know? How do we know if they're being accurate? Great questions. I think Joe Rogan is really getting it. I think he's getting to the bottom of this issue. This is stuff we were bringing up a moment ago. And also, this is another issue that he raises. I think the issue is, who are they polling? When are they polling? Where are they polling? And also, you got to consider the current climate. We've talked about this before, where we're just got to say, hey, if you're a Trump supporter, would you want to answer one of these polls? Would you want to honestly say on the record that you're supporting Trump in this day and age? I mean, it seems like a given. A lot of people do. I'll say it all the time on the show. But if you're just a private citizen, you're minding your own business, you're trying to get by day, you not want to cause any trouble, not want anyone to hassle you, I think a lot of Trump supporters might just hang up that phone call or just say, hey, I'm busy, I'm not available, something like that, because you could get a lot of backlash for supporting Trump. There's a lot of instances of violence against Trump supporters. People could vandalize your house. They could attack you in public. They could get you even fired from your job or something. Like you could not get a job because of this. Like there's a lot of things that could go wrong if you're exposed as a Trump supporter. That's why they call us the silent majority in a lot of ways, because not only are we usually kind of sitting back and waiting for the election to vote, but also you kind of want to remain silent in this kind of climate. We see these violent protesters, these terrible, angry Antifa and BLM storming the streets, tearing down stores. It's like, do you really want to put up a Trump sign in your yard when you know everything that's getting torn down and people are burning down houses with Trump stuff on it? It's like, no. And that is just a bigger issue. And this little phone call, this little poll, it's just a really small thing. So it's really easy for people to just not answer. Like no one's going to answer this honestly. The host continued by saying, in short, that the election may come down to the percentage of people who are willing to vote for Mr. Biden, knowing that his vice president would be the de facto commander in chief. Yeah, this is a big point to keep in mind this year. Whoever Biden picks for VP, that's the real candidate. That's who's going to be in power very shortly after he's elected, if he's elected, God forbid. And another thing to note about that is, I mean, Biden said he was going to announce his VP candidate on August 1st. We're already almost a week past that. So he's about 7 days behind on that announcement. He may have announced it by the time you're watching this video or by the time it's released, but I haven't heard anything about it. I've heard a lot of speculation, but no official announcement. And it's because I think Biden's not ready. They're not really sure where they're going with this. It's showing that they're having a troubled campaign. They're not prepared. They're not confident. They're not competent either. I mean, this is just bad form and a bad look for everyone. And Joe Rogan, he's a smart guy. He sees right through it. And it's good to see him putting these kinds of ideas out there on his big hit show. I believe there's a large group of people that are uncomfortable with Donald Trump being the president. I absolutely believe that, Mr. Rogan said. I believe that there's also a large group of people that are uncomfortable with a man who seems to be mentally compromised winning the election and doing so hiding. I mean, the guy's he was just at a thing the other day and he forgot where he was. Mr. Baker said all bets are off until Mr. Biden finally names his running mate. So that is a big move. That's something we're all waiting on, is the running mate announcement. And I think it's going to go to show who could actually be in charge, because you got to remember, that's not just a thing that we are saying or speculating. This is also something Biden has said himself. He said he probably won't run for a second term. He's not sure if he'll make it through the first term. Now, he said that in different ways. He's implied it. He said during questioning that, I'm not sure I'd run for a second term. And that's just really disturbing. I mean, almost all presidents have considered running for a second term. It's very rare for them not to. And it usually means there's some kind of big situation keeping them from it. Like, for example, they could get voted out, of course, but if they're not even going to run for the second term, it usually means they mess something up, or they're not mentally or healthy enough. They could have a physical health deficiency or something like that. They're getting old, whatever it may be. But it's not a good sign. Like, you don't want to pick a candidate who can't even make it through the next 8 years. Like, you need someone strong to be president. You need someone who can stand strong for 10, 20 years. I mean, I know these guys tend to be old, but they don't have to be. I know Biden is one of the older, probably the oldest candidate we've seen in our generation. But I mean, it's not a good sign. And especially if they can't make it to the second term. I mean, is he even going to make it through the first term? I think this is just maybe a sneaky way to get his VP into office. And the other part about that to remember is he's promised to pick a black female VP, which is another thing, another bias thing that he's done. He's picking based on race and gender, not based on credibility and credentials and someone who fits the job properly. No, he's doing the whole woke thing and saying, I'm going to pick a minority female just to pander to leftists and try to act like he's down with the minorities. But as we've seen in other discussions, I mean, he's not really cool with black people like he thinks. I know he was VP under the black president Obama, but that doesn't make him not racist. Like, that doesn't make his things he said about the black community okay. I mean, for example, he said, you're not black if you don't vote for Biden. That's pretty offensive. And then he's also said to a reporter that they might be a junkie because they asked him a hard question. That was a black reporter, and kind of had racial implications there. And lastly, we just had a video about how he said that all black people think the same, unlike Latinos. So he's favored Latinos over blacks, even though he's pretending to pander to them for this VP pick. And I think it just all goes to show that his whole campaign is a mess. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Also, hit that like button if you enjoyed what you saw. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell for notifications. And subscribe to our second channel as well, called NoBS News. Until next time, have a great day.